على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now in today's lesson we are going to make a start on the section of Ghusl. Now there are three compulsory acts of Ghusl, three farais of Ghusl. They are: number one, al-madmadatu, i.e. to rinse and to gargle one's mouth. So to rinse your mouth, and what I mean by rinsing is that to make sure water reaches every part of the mouth. So you don't actually have to gargle, but as long as the water reaches the gums, the lips, the entire mouth, then that would be sufficient. Number two, wal istinshaqu, i.e. to rinse and to clean one's nose. So that is also a compulsory act of ghusl, that you clean out your nose and to make sure that the nose, the water reaches the soft bone in the nose. And the third compulsory act of ghusl is wa ghaslu sa'il badan, is to wash your entire body. So these are the three compulsory acts of ghusl. Now remember, it's only compulsory to do these three things if you are having a compulsory or a ritual bath. And inshallah I'll mention later when does ghusl and a bath become compulsory and farz. Now the next point to jot down here is with regards to the sunnah method of performing ghusl. What is the sunnah way of performing ghusl? Now the sunnah way of performing ghusl is when you enter the shower cubicle, you firstly wash your hands up to your wrist. Thereafterwards, you should then wash your private parts. Remember, this is the sunnah procedures of performing ghusl. So after washing your hands, you then wash your private parts. And obviously, what's the hikmah, what's the wisdom behind washing your hands first? Obviously, there may be some najas, some impurity on your hands. So therefore, what you do is that you try to wash your hands first so that you get rid of the najas and the impurity, and then you wash the other parts of your body. Because if there's najas on your hand and you haven't washed it properly, and then you start using your hand to then rub the other parts of your body, then what will happen is that the najas will then spread to the other parts of the body. So firstly, you wash your hands, you then wash your private parts. Then afterwards, you remove any najaasah, any kind of filth which may be on the parts of your body. You remove the najaasah or the filth which is on the parts of your body. So for example, just say if somebody's had a wet dream, ihtilam. So sometimes what happens is that the semen then spreads onto a person's thighs. Or like it was on his pants, but then it spreads onto his knees, onto his thighs, that particular area. So after washing your private parts, you then make sure that the thighs area or where the najasat has spread to, you then wash that properly. After you remove the najasat, what you then do is that you then perform wuzu as you would perform wuzu for salah. So you then do your wuzu again, wash your hands, mouth, nose, face, everything. You do the complete wuzu. Even though, because sometimes what will happen is that if you're in the shower cubicle, sometimes, because when you're washing your hands and there's like water coming down, sometimes what happens, naturally your hair and everything gets wet. Or naturally your arm may get wet. Even then, no, you still have to do the entire wuzu from the beginning. So you wash your face, wash your arms up to your elbows. You do the sarki masa, the masa of the head as normal, as I explained in the early lesson with the masa of the ears and the masa of the area outside the ears, the massa of the nape. You do all that, you wash your feet. You'll only wash your feet if the water is flowing down into the plug hole easily. In other words, if the water doesn't gather around the plug hole, then in that case you will be allowed to wash your feet then and there. However, if there was water kind of gathered near the plug hole, then in that situation you should delay washing the feet all the way until the end. And the reason or the hikmah behind that is because if there is a najas or impurity and the water is not going down the plug hole or the drain pipes properly, and it's all gathered there, then if you wash your feet, then what happens is that you then step back into the puddle again and your feet's going to get najas again. So if that is the case, you then wash the feet at the end. But if the puddle is not there, if the water is flowing into the plug hole easily, then in that situation you can wash your feet then and there, and that would not be a problem, and that would not be any kind of issue in that particular situation. Now, the next point to mention is that after you've done your wudu, what you then do is that you then perform, or you then wash your entire body. You then wash your entire body. And obviously it's sunnah that you pour over your body water 3 times. So in other words, you'll firstly pour water over your head, and thereafterwards you then pour water over your right shoulder and your left shoulder. And then lastly, he goes on to explain that you then wash your feet if you hadn't washed it earlier, and in that particular way you complete the procedure of wudu. The procedure of ghusl. As said, that obviously what we generally speaking tend to do is that what we could do is that after we wet our body, wash our body once or even twice, we soak it, then obviously we could use some shower gel, soap, then obviously just put it over our body to remove any najas, any kind of impurity, and thereafterwards we then rinse it and then finish our ghusl. So that is also allowed as well. And one point to mention here, because sometimes brothers ask this question that, using soap or using shower gels or using shampoos, are they against the sunnah or not? Is it mentioned in any hadith that the Prophet ﷺ used shower gel or soap or these kind of things? Now, the answer in a nutshell is that when we look through the hadiths, we actually will find some hadiths of Rasulullah ﷺ using something which was perfumed or fragranced when he came to perform ghusl. And there's a hadith which can be found in Sahih Muslim, where it's mentioned that Rasulullah ﷺ used something in Arabic called khitmi, khatwa mim ya. And khitmi is a type of fragrance. So it's mentioned in the hadith of Sahih Muslim that Rasulullah ﷺ would put that on his hair, and then he would rinse the khitmi from his hair. So if you want to use a modern day example, using shampoo and these kind of things would be allowed and permissible. And obviously not only that, but it's also like a sign of purification, a sign of tahara. It's like nice fragrance. It's when you use soap, when you use shampoo, you smell nice. You're not giving taklif either to the brother next to you, because if you don't use those kind of things and you just like wash your body, sometimes the sweat and the bad smell still remains. So if you were to use khitmi, or if you were to use any other kind of permissible or lawful perfume or fragrance, soap or shower gels or shampoo, then that would be allowed, and that would not be considered to be against the sunnah. The next section here, the third part of the ghusl section, is basically those things which makes ghusl farz and wajib and obligatory. Basically, in which situations is it obligatory for a person to perform ghusl. Now, it's mentioned in Al-Mukhtasar Al-Quduri here that ghusl or a ritual bath becomes obligatory at inzalul mani ala wajhi dafaq wa shahwa, i.e. if there is ejaculation of mani, i.e. semen, then ghusl becomes obligatory and farz. Now I mentioned yesterday in the fiqh of Ramadan the terms briefly, but as we're doing a fiqh of tahara here, so I'll just go over these terms again in a bit more detail. There's two terms which I'm just going to describe here to the brothers briefly. One is called madhi and the other one is called mani. Madhi is spelled in Arabic as mim, dal, ya, and mani is spelled as mim, nun, ya. Now madhi, as mentioned in the hadith, is thin. It's a very thin liquid. Thin meaning like it's not sticky, but it's very, very thin. That is the characteristic of madhi, whereas mani is more thicker. Mani, mim, nun, ya, is more thicker. And madhi is something which comes out before intercourse with one's wife. In other words, at the time of what we call in Arabic as mula'aba with one's wife. So in other words, when somebody is touching his wife, kissing his wife, being intimate, but obviously without intercourse, then the liquid which comes out, we call that madhi, mim, dal, ya. Whereas mani is the thicker liquid which comes out at the time of intercourse. So what I'm trying to explain is that if madhi comes out, you don't have to go for ghusl. Your wuzu breaks, but you don't have to go for ghusl. Whereas if mani was to come out, mim, nun, ya, the mani, if the thicker semen was to come out, then in that situation, ghusl becomes first. Ghusl becomes first. So now when does this mani come out? Which takes me on to the next part. Obviously, it can come out at the time of intercourse with one's wife. Also, it can come out, even though it is unlawful and haram, at the time of masturbation, which is what we call in Arabic as istimna bil yad. So at the time of istimna bil yad, which is haram, but obviously, unfortunately, some people do it, and obviously, they need to know the rules as well, that, look, if it was to happen, then ghusl becomes first. You need to go for a shower, you need to go for a bath. So mani may come out at istimna bil yad may come, or that may become first when that comes out. Masturbation, when the semen comes out, then ghusl becomes first. Also, ghusl is first at the time of ihtilam, which means wet dream. Now let me explain the rules about wet dream just very briefly. It's mentioned in the hadith, innamal ma'u minal ma'. And then it goes on to explain that what is meant by al-ma'u minal ma', it means if somebody was to see or feel some wetness in the morning when he wakes up. So he wakes up and he finds some semen on his pants. Now remember, it has to be semen, not sweat. Because sometimes it happens, we wake up in the morning and we feel that there's a bit of wetness on our pants. But that wetness, when we further inspect it, we realize that it's actually more sweat and not semen. So that's fine. You don't have to redo a ghusl for that. Obviously, if out of cleanliness you want to have a shower, then that's different. But it's not first. But if you wake up in the morning and you find wetness there, and wetness when you inspect it, it looks like the semen, it looks the thicker one. So in that situation, ghusl will become first, even though lam yara ihtilaman, even though that person did not see a dream. Even though that person did not see a dream. So what I mean is that the entire night he spent just sleeping, didn't see a dream at all, didn't see any kind of erotic dream. And then he wakes up in the morning and he finds some impurity and najas on his clothes, like semen on his clothes. So in that situation, the rule would be that he will have to go for ghusl, and ghusl will be farz. Straightforward, simple ruling. However, if that person, he saw a dream, it's in the night before he saw a dream, like in a very erotic dream, it was in some kind of beaches, whatever, and he saw a dream, but then when he wakes up in the morning, he finds no wetness there. So ghusl would not be farz on him. Okay, so keep that in mind when it comes to wet dream. That if he sees everything in a dream, but then when he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't see anything on his trousers, on his pants, then in that situation, ghusl is not farz. Whereas, on the contrary, if somebody, say for example, did not see a dream, but in the morning when he wakes up, he finds some wetness there, ghusl will be farz and ghusl will be obligatory. Another situation when ghusl becomes farz, and this is very important, is at the time of intercourse between husband and wife. Sometimes there isn't ejaculation from the husband's side. But what happens is that the husband and wife, their private parts touch with each other. Their private parts touch with each other. What I mean by that is the dhakar, i.e. the male's front private part, inserts into the woman's private parts. Just inserts, just a little. But there was no kind of ejaculation from the man. Now the rule is that as soon as the man's private part enters the woman's private parts, ghusl becomes farz, even though there was no ejaculation. Min ghayri inzal mani, even though there was no ejaculation. Even though there was no ejaculation, what will happen is that ghusl will become farz and obligatory. Just by the mere touching of the two private parts, ghusl becomes farz, even though there is no ejaculation from the husband.
Touching or insert?
Yeah, touching meaning like inserting. Insert. He has to insert. Okay, yeah, so if he like touched, so if the man's front private part just touched the outer part of the woman, then ghusl is not farz. But as soon as he enters, just inserts a bit, then that's it, ghusl becomes farz and obligatory, irrespective of whether there is the ejaculation of mani or not. Obviously, some of the situations where ghusl becomes farz is for women. This is in particular after they finish their periods and their nifas, then ghusl becomes farz. And the last point to jot down here is that ghusl is sunnah to perform. So not farz, but it is a sunnah to perform for Jummah Salah, for Lil Jumu'ah, for Jummah, the day of Jummah, for Jummah Salah, wal Eidain, for the two Eids, Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, and for when putting on ihram. Ihram is the two white shrouds or clothing which we put on for Hajj. So when you put that on at the time of Arafah also, so to perform ghusls for these four situations, i.e. for Jummah, number two, the two Eids, for ihram, when you put on your ihram clothes, and for Arafah, then that is considered to be sunnah, that is considered to be desirable. Obviously, there are other occasions where ghusl, to perform ghusl is desirable and mustahab, such as, if you like sweating a lot and you're going to be giving taklif to brothers and sisters, then it's good to perform ghusl. Or on blessed nights or blessed days like Laylatul Qadr, or on the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah or 10th of Muharram or any other blessed days, then to perform ghusl is considered to be mustahab and desirable in those situations. Any questions from any brothers? Or
the Arafah day, is it also for those who are not
No. Only for those who are in Arafah, those who have gone for Hajj. Any questions, any brothers? No? Oh, do you have a question? Okay. Now I'm just going to mention some other points here, just with regards to purification, without going into too much detail. The first question, so the next section which we're going to start, you could entitle it as Mutafarriqat lit-Tahara, i.e. Miscellaneous rulings with regards to Tahara and purification. No rules about purification, but there isn't a particular section for those. Now what I'm going to mention in this section is with regards to more like personal hygiene. It comes under Tahara, personal hygiene, such as cutting nails and removing unwanted hair. Now with regards to, let's begin with nails. Now it is a sunnah that one cuts his nails every 7 days, in particular on a Friday before Jummah Salah. So before Jummah, on a Friday, it is considered sunnah to cut one's nails. If you can't cut it within 7 days, then try to cut it within 15 days. So if you can't do it within 7 days, then cut it within 15. And to have your nails longer than 40 days is considered to be makruh tahrini. Are you not having cut your nails for more than 40 days is considered to be makruh tahrini. This is going to be very, very long, and when you look at it, there will be no difference in a way between you and say like the claws of a hawk or the claws of a tiger. You know, they have long nails, don't they, tigers? So what's the difference between you and them? So that is one difference, one thing which we as human beings do. It's part of fitrah. That, the teachings of fitrah of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam was, taqlimul asfar, to cut the nails. So we should cut the nails, and we should do that every 7 days, 15 days, the very least before 40 days, otherwise it will be makruh tahrini. The next point to jot down about nails is there a particular sequence of cutting the nails? In other words, do we have to start from index finger, the middle finger, and so on? Is there a particular sequence with regards to that? Now, inshallah, obviously the brothers, we will read in Ta'limul Haqq, one of the books in the course, that it's mentioned there that one should start cutting from the index finger. So you start from the right hand, the right index finger, and then you cut your nails, and then you finish on the thumb on the right hand. Okay, so that's what he's mentioning, Ta'lim al-Haq. However, a great scholar in the name of Hafiz ibn Hajar, he's a Shafi scholar, written a very famous commentary of Sahih al-Bukhari known as Fathul Bari. So he's written that there is no such kind of sequence when it comes to cutting the nails. In other words, it's not mentioned in the hadith that you need to start cutting your nails from the index finger on the right hand. So in other words, in a nutshell, you could cut your nails from whichever way you want. Okay, that is totally allowed, permissible. If you want to act upon the ruling which is mentioned by some Salaf, and cut your nails from the right index finger, because the right index finger, as you know, is what we use for the Shahada. So if you want to start from there, then that is good, but it's not proven or established from any hadith. So that's one point to remember. The next point to jot down here is with regards to unwanted hair. So now unwanted hair here means basically natful ibit wa natful ana, i.e. hair which is below the navel or hair which is below the armpits. So ibit means armpits, that area, and ana means the hair which is below the navel. Navel means the area just above your private parts, that area. Now again, same rule as cutting nails, that one should try to remove it within 7 days. If not 7 days, then 15 days. If not, one should not have it beyond 40 days. And if he does, then it will be considered to be makruh tahrimi and severely disliked. It will be considered to be makruh tahrimi and severely disliked, to the extent that, namaz would not be, well, the obligation of namaz would be accepted, but one would not get the full reward and the full thawab. Now, another point with regards to the hair, just to keep in mind, is that if the hair below or in between the bottom, the maq'ad, the hair which is between the buttocks, now that's also very important as well, because sometimes brothers and also sisters, they are very lax and very unprecautious when it comes to the hair which is below the bottom. So it's also required that one also removes that hair as well. Because the reason why we have to remove the hair is because the armpit area, the navel area, it's like area where najas can easily get trapped between the hair. It can easily get stuck in the hair. So that's why it's recommended also out of hygiene as well, that you remove the hair so that that area is nice and clean. So similarly, the area which is between the bottom, that is also, there's like a lot of najas there as well, because you're passing feces and so on. So there's a lot of najas there as well. So you should also use a razor to remove that particular hair from that area, so that the fit dubur area, so that any kind of najaasah which may be stuck there would be removed when you are removing the hair. The next point to jot down here is obviously how do we remove the hair? So obviously you can use razors, you can use creams, or you can pluck. So whichever way is easy. Obviously, especially modern day, it's more like razors and so on. So if you use razors and so on, then that would be fine. But the idea is that, inshallah, try to regularly remove it, so that no najas and no kind of impurity remains in that particular area. Any questions any brothers have?
Does the same time period apply to the third category?
Yep.
Like
40
more
days.
than 40 days?
You should remove it. Do you have a question? Okay, please.
Regarding the nails, is it also for women?
Yeah, okay, I'll mention one ruling about women. Yeah, it's also for women as well. But I'll come back to this one ruling, inshallah.
Just from when it comes to hair, I'm thinking of plucking the hair. It could be under this topic maybe. Eyebrows for men and women. Plucking the hair there is no go.
Okay. I'll just mention on the camera already. Okay, now one of the brothers is asking the question about plucking eyebrows. Is that permissible or not? So I'm just going to explain a bit more in depth, because obviously a very common question which many sisters ask, is it permissible or not? Now, there's a hadith which is mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, very famous hadith, more or less in all the 6 books of hadith, you find this hadith, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has cursed those women who pluck their eyebrows, and also those women who pluck it for them. So either the women who pluck, and sometimes in beauty parlors you have women or stylists who then kind of pluck those women's hair. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that the woman whose hair is being plucked, and also the plucker, i.e. the woman who's plucking it for them, both are included in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's curse. Now, plucking hair is impermissible for women. There's a couple of reasons why. Because number one is you are changing Allah's God-given features. obviously Allah has created that sister with, say, some, with eyebrows, which was nothing wrong with it, but she wants to, like, trim it, pluck it, make it look thin, and, make it look, all fashionable and so on. So she's changing the takhliq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She's changing Allah's God-given features. So that's one reason why it's impermissible. Another reason, unfortunately, we see that many sisters who do that, they want to copy the trend. Yep, unfortunately, with regards to Muslims, and we shouldn't really be shocked or kind of surprised, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that a time will come when Muslims will follow and imitate the Jews and the Christians. It's in the hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari. That's one of the signs of the Day of Judgment, that Muslims will copy the non-believers, even to the extent, Allah forbid, but it's mentioned in the hadith, that even to the extent that if a non-believer was committing zina with his own mother, the Muslims will copy in that. And we see that many of the sins or many of the bad things which were started by non-believers, non-Muslims, Muslims are doing the same. So we shouldn't really be shocked and surprised. So exactly here, that's another reason why this is impermissible, is because it's a way of the fusaq, of the immoral people. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith, "Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum." That whoever imitates a group of people, then they are from them. So because of these two reasons, there's other reasons as well. It's like a fashion thing. Unfortunately, many sisters, they pluck it with the intention to attract non-mahram men towards them. Many other reasons why they do it. So because of that reason, plucking eyebrows is not permissible for women. However, it's also in the Darul Ifta website as well that I have mentioned that if the eyebrows is such that it's all linked together, like sometimes women, they have hair on top of their nose, this area here is linked together. So if they were to pluck this part, then that would be allowed. Or if a woman's got too bigger eyebrows, like her eyebrows too bushy, yeah. So if she was to remove a bit of the hair just to make it look normal and not abnormal, then that would be allowed, that would be permissible. So these are the only two situations. But besides that, in other situations, it would not be permissible for women or sisters to pluck their eyebrows. Okay, and just very quickly the next section, and inshallah we'll finish for tonight, is with regards to anjas, i.e. impurities and najas, and how to get rid of it. Now the rule is that if any najasa or impurity, which, say for example, can be seen, so فَمَا كَانَ لَهُ عَيْنٌ مَرْئِيَّةٌ, i.e. najasa or impurity which can be seen. So something najas like feces or vomit. So when that falls on your clothes, you can see the feces. Blood, when it falls on your clothes, you could see the redness of the blood on your clothes. Vomit, when it falls on your clothes, it remains on your clothes. So any najasa which can be seen, the ruling is فَطَهَارَتُهَا زَوَالُ عَيْنِهَا. Its purification is that you remove the ayn of the impurity. You remove the essence of the impurity. In other words, that you remove the impurity, the mark of the impurity, as much as possible. However, it goes on to say that if after trying to remove the impurity, and again, you don't use soap to remove the impurity, you just got water, you tried your best to remove it, but some stain remains. So that is okay, that is fine. So as long as you try to remove the body of the impurity means you try your best to get rid of the impurity as much as possible. So you remove the body of the impurity. So whatever stain remains, then that is fine, that is okay. That would not make the clothes najas. You could pray salah with that, that would be fine. Because when you look at blood, when it comes onto your clothes, unless you put it into a washing machine, it's not going to actually remove the impurity fully. The stain will still remain. So you need to remove the, so if you try your best removing it and some stain remains, that's fine, khalas, that's fine. Your clothes will remain dark and pure. However, it goes on to say that وَمَا لَيْسَ لَهُ عَيْنٌ مَرْئِيَّةٌ, i.e., as for those impurities where it cannot be seen, in other words, you can't see the impurity, you can't see the najas. So I'll give you examples such as urine. Because urine, what happens with urine is that when it falls on your clothes, you know when it dries, you can't see urine anymore. You know when it dries, you can't see urine. Similarly with regards to khamar as well, alcohol. The alcohol is such that if it falls on your clothes, we're talking more about like your white wine, not like red wine because the stain, everything remains there. But we're talking more about white wine that when it falls on your clothes, when it dries, i.e. when the wine dries, you can't see the effect and the athar anymore. It disappears. So for those types of impurities, the ruling is فَطَهَارَتُهَا أَن يَغْسِلَ حَتَّى يَغْلِبَ عَلَى ظَنِّ الْغَاسِلِ أَنَّهُ قَدْ طَهُرَ, which means that the person should wash it. He should wash it until he is satisfied that that area is clean and pure. Okay, so if there's like, you know, like, say for example, you went to the toilet and you know that some urine fell on this particular part of the kapra, this particular part of the izar. So what you should do is that you should wash it. You should wash it until your heart is satisfied that it is now clean and it is now pak. Until your heart is satisfied that it is clean and pak. So it could be 3 times is the norm. But if after washing it 3 times your heart is not satisfied, you still think that it is impure and najas, then you wash it 5 times, 7 times until you are sure in your heart that it is clean and it is pak. And it's also necessary as well that you kind of rinse it as well. You rinse it, squeeze it I should say, rather than rinse it, you squeeze it. So in other words, if you get that izar, part of the izar with the impurity has fell, you washed it, then also squeeze it as well to remove the impurity. Because the reason why you squeeze it is because the impurity has fallen on that part of the clothes and then it's dried. So it's kind of dried, meaning that it's gone stuck inside the izar. So therefore, by rinsing it, then inshallah, in that particular way, you remove the remaining drops of the najas away from the clothes and away from the garment.
Just no matter what kind of najaasah, also the first part, also the blood.
Yeah, also for the first part is what it be recommended.